Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Events, Digital Marketing's Next Frontier. This is something that's near and dear to my heart as a marketer. So throughout today's webinar, let's keep it engaging. So feel free to chat with your fellow attendees, use Q&A on the right as well, and we'll answer your questions at the end of today's session. So let's meet our presenters for today. I'm Patrick Smith, Cvent's Chief Marketing Officer, and with me are Conrad Mills, Principal Analyst at Forrester, and McNeel Keenan, Vice President of Technology at Cvent. So before we get started, let me set a little bit of context today for the discussion. So what's really underpinning this new frontier of events is the digitization of events that happen. And McKinsey said something very profound in the beginning part of the pandemic. Essentially, when everyone was at home, the business world vaulted 5 years ahead in about 8 weeks from a technology perspective and a digital transformation perspective back when the pandemic started. And it happened in the events industry because the events world was forced to go digital. And that meant they had to go virtual, right? And a virtual event is a digital event, and a digital event with the right technology gives you the opportunity to track event interactions at scale. So that's what's so exciting. We're entering this world now where events are not offline, events are not qualitative, they're quantitative, they're digitized, they're essentially digital marketing tactics now. And there's so much value there that you can get if you can harness those digital demand signals. So Forrester has done some very interesting research around the digitization of events, and I'll turn it over to Conrad to dive deeper.
Thanks, Patrick. So I'm just going to start by talking a little bit about some of the changes that have taken place in the event sector over the past couple of years. So we think back to pre-pandemic days, events were primarily an in-person channel, but fast forward to now, in a recent Forrester survey, we had 63% of respondents telling us that they plan to conduct the same number or more virtual events during the next 12 months. But that's not to say that in-person events don't have a future. Clearly, they do. And in the same survey, 3/4 of the people that we spoke to told us that they were planning to conduct an in-person event this year. But what I'm hearing from clients and what I'm seeing is that in many cases, the approach that they're taking to in-person events this year is different. They're smaller, they're more localized. In many cases, they're more account-based. There's more regional decision-making autonomy around these in-person events. And crucially, also, they have more digital interactions in them. We've also got a new event type to add into the mix now as well, hybrid. And in the same survey, we had 58% of respondents telling us that the future of flagship business-to-business events was going to be hybrid. So a lot of changes in the event sector over the past couple of years. Now, let's look at some of the benefits that digital transformation has delivered. So firstly, and this is from the same enterprise marketing event survey, just over 3/4 of the people that we spoke to pointed to the increased reach and attendance that they now had through the digitization of their events. And I think here it's important to think about the new audiences that you've been able to reach over the past couple of years. So audiences that weren't or aren't comfortable attending an in-person event, but with the right virtual event content and experience, were happy to attend. We also had 59% of respondents pointing to their ability to repurpose event content for use in different locations. And this can be something as simple as selecting a couple of sessions and then reshowing our simulive in another country or region, or topping or tailing with some new content. But it also enables you to start thinking about your events as primary assets, and to start thinking about what some of those derivative assets are that you can create from this primary event content. 57% of the people that we spoke to also pointed to the ability to better understand the audiences that they were engaging with. And typically, this was a weakness of in-person events. And oftentimes, data was limited to a list of attendance. This could be shared on a spreadsheet that you then try to upload into your CRM. But now we have the opportunity to learn so much more about attendees at events, from the interactions that they undertake, the questions they ask, the polls they respond to, the content that they download. And we also had 57% pointing towards their ability to extend event duration beyond those original broadcast dates. And primarily here, we're talking about the ability to engage with on-demand event content, which, as I'll touch on later, is a crucial element of event strategies. But this also starts to extend into the concept of building community around your event, so you've got more ongoing continuous engagement with event audiences. Okay, so just one more point on virtual events, because there's been a lot of talk of virtual event fatigue over the last few months, and clearly organizations have focused very strongly on in-person events this year. And there was a lot of pent-up demand around in-person events, which do offer something unique in terms of engagement. But the point I'd make is that when it comes to virtual events, we shouldn't be comparing attendances now and next year with 2020 and 2021. A more realistic comparison should be back to 2019, pre-pandemic. And this is just a simple Google search for virtual events as a trend. And we can see there was that massive spike at the start of the pandemic. But what I think is interesting is that interest hasn't fallen back to those 2019 levels. It started to flatten out, and it's significantly above where it was back in 2019. So virtual events are clearly here to stay as a permanent element in the marketing mix. What does that mean overall in terms of the mix? What are marketers looking to use next year when it comes to their event mix? And this is data from a study that we ran over the summer, and the consensus, I think, is clearly that marketers are looking to leverage the full mix of in-person, virtual, and hybrid. And actually, in this particular survey, the largest percentage of respondents were actually pointing towards virtual events. And the conversations I'm having with clients at the moment, they're telling me that they're looking to make use of all three event types moving forward. It's also interesting to think about what this means from a technology perspective. And in a separate survey at the start of this year, we asked marketers around some of the areas they were looking to invest in. And we asked about investment plans for marketing event management solutions this year. And as you can see, 57% of marketers were telling us that they were actually looking to increase their spend on event tech this year. And this isn't just virtual event tech. This is event technology to also support that drive for more digital interactions in in-person events as they start to come back. So let's now pivot and look at what this means from a buyer perspective. And just a little bit of background to this as a topic. So we ask around 1,000 buyers every couple of years about their buyers' journeys, the number of interactions they've taken on those journeys, and the types of interactions that have been most impactful as buyers have looked to move from one stage to another. And the first general point I'd make is that buyers' journeys have got longer over the last couple of years. If we look back at data from 2019, the average number of interactions in a business-to-business purchase process was 17. That's increased by over 50% to 27 interactions now. And there's been a corresponding increase both in the purchase length, the purchase timeframe length, but also the complexity of purchasing. So we can see that 83% of all business-to-business purchases are now taken by complex buying groups. And there's some really interesting implications around this from an events perspective. So if we think about those three event phases of pre, at, and post, we actually have lots of opportunities to drive some of those interactions that buyers are looking to take, and actually to shorten the time frame of those longer purchase processes that we're now seeing. The other thing that it's interesting to look at, though, is how buyers are actually viewing events at the moment, because there have been some really significant changes over the course of the pandemic. So what I'm showing here now is a comparison of data from 2019 pre-pandemic with 2021. And what you can see listed out here are the different types of event interaction that buyers were able to select from. And then the percentages are showing the percentages of buyers that found a particular event interaction type impactful at that particular stage of the buyer's journey. So either discover, evaluate, or commit. And the first general point I'd make is if you just eyeball those percentages for 2019 and 2021, they're significantly higher, pretty much across the board now as compared to pre-pandemic. So buyers are telling us they're getting more value from events now than they did pre-pandemic. And then if we dig into the data a little bit, we can see that in particular, some of those virtual event types have increased in importance quite substantially. So if we look at virtual events at the discover stage, that's increased by over 5 percentage points over that 2-year time frame. And the sort of online discussion orientated events at the commit stage of the buyer's journey, that's actually doubled from 10 to 20%. So some really interesting changes in terms of how buyers are viewing events. There is, however, one event type that appears to have fallen substantially over the past 2 years, and that's webinars at the start of the buyer's journey. So back in 2019, webinars were actually the number one interaction from a buyer perspective when they were looking to educate themselves at the start of the buyer's journey. And that's fallen by over 10 percentage points. It's no longer even the most impactful event type. Well, what's interesting is if we look at the evaluate stage, that's actually increased substantially. So buyers are seeing webinars differently now, and organizers are using webinars differently. The other point, though, that I'd make is if you look down at that replay figure down at the bottom of the list, that's increased from 12 to over 20% over the past 2 years. And actually, if you add the live and the replay figures together, it's actually pretty similar. So buyers aren't actually telling us they don't value webinar style content at the start of the buyer's journey. They're saying that they want to be able to engage with it flexibly and on their own terms. So we think about what this means from an event planning perspective. What we're advocating is making the attendee, the audience, the center of your event planning. And there's a couple of levels to consider around this. Firstly, when it comes to those 3 event phases of pre, at, and post, think about how you can use some of the data that you're gathering at each of those phases to better personalize the next phase for the buyer. But then more broadly, think about how you can construct an event strategy that makes use of the full range of event types during the course of an extended planning period so that you're using events when they're most useful to buyers and seeking to gather data and insight from those events to then inform the next best event interaction. The other thing that I'd say when it comes to events is think about how you can incorporate more digital interactions into your in-person events as these start to come back. Now, we've seen the value that digitization has delivered through virtual events over the past couple of years, and clients are telling me that they want to incorporate more digital interactions into in-person as they come back. And there's 2 benefits to this. Firstly, as an organizer, you're able to capture more of that rich data and insight that you've got used to over the past couple of years. But you can also start to enhance the attendee experience. Attendee expectations around events have changed dramatically over the past 2 years. If you think going back to the way in which you were doing in-person events pre-pandemic is going to deliver the same results now as it did back in 2019, you're probably mistaken. So we think about just a really simple example of something like a chatbot and how deploying a chatbot across those 3 event phases of pre, at, and post can both improve the attendee experience and deliver valuable insight. So from an attendee perspective, Pre-event, you're able to provide immediate 24/7 support to them. You're able to personalize how they engage on a landing page and also reduce friction when they're registering. From an organizer perspective, you can start to use some of the data that you've gathered to input into event planning and improve the at-event experience for attendees. And then by continuing to use a chatbot across all 3 event phases, you're delivering a consistent and personalized experience to attendees. And you're able to use this to make recommendations to them and start to automate some of those post-event follow-up activities. And the data that you're gathering can be used as a key input into future event planning and as an input into the wider demand programs that you should be seeking to integrate your events into. However, none of that makes sense unless you've integrated your event technology into your wider sales and marketing ecosystem. And in our enterprise marketing event survey, 3/4 of marketers told us that the ability to seamlessly collect data on attendees was essential or very important to them. But in the same survey, over half of marketers told us that they still hadn't integrated their event tech with their wider marketing ecosystem. And integration comes from considering the full scope of technology that you're using across all 3 event phases, so pre, at, and post, and then thinking about how you can get that data quickly and seamlessly into your map for personalized post-event follow-up and into your CRM so that your RDR and sales teams can follow up quickly and seamlessly and ideally in real time. The other thing that it enables you to do is actually better measure event performance as well. And event performance measurements starts with having a really clear understanding of what it is you're looking to achieve with your event. What goals are you setting in terms of reputation building, so awareness activity, demand goals, audience experience, but also audience understanding. What can you better learn about your attendees, their organizations, the wider market? And once you've set those clear goals, you then want to think about the questions that your event stakeholders need answering across those 3 event stages, pre, at, and post, and then start to think about the different sources of data that you've got that can help you answer those questions, and then partnering with marketing operations to be able to extract that data from your event technology and use that to report in dashboards. So back to you, Patrick.
So I think it's clear that digitization is a huge opportunity for event organizers and marketers, but it really does take event technology to do it right. And this is really an important point for marketers. If you take advantage of event digitization, and if you have the right technology to capture unique engagement interactions, I really think that you can gather more information about your audience faster than just about any other marketing tactic. I mean, think even, 3 hours or 2 days with someone, if you're gathering all this great information, you're getting an astounding amount of information in a short period of time, which hopefully, to Conrad's point earlier, can help collapse some of those sales cycles and make them faster. So it takes technology to do it. I'm going to turn things over to McNeel to talk about how Cvent technology allows you to harness the power of event digitization to take engagement to the next level. But I want to remind everyone, please ask questions. We're going to answer them at the end, so use Q&A. With that, I'm going to turn it over to McNeel.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Patrick's actually right here to my left, but I don't know if he's shown you guys that yet, but we will, of course, in the end. So excited to see a lot of you already participating in the chat, already participating in the Q&A. So we'll look forward to taking your questions in just a bit. So Conrad presented some great data. What I want to talk about is kind of how this applies to the world of event technology, how we're enabling you to execute on the changing expectations of your audience. That might be before the event, during the event, after the event, even what's happening in between events. Certainly 2-3 years almost spent in nothing but virtual experiences has totally changed the expectations of your audience and increased the opportunities you have to build that relationship, to build engagement at all phases of the event lifecycle. So let's start by looking before the event. First of all, when we started to think about attendee engagement, many of us thought about attendee engagement as starting when people arrived to our in-person event. That was when attendees would mostly download the mobile app, when they physically got there on site. They'd use the app throughout the event and delete it usually as they're walking onto the airplane. But now engagement can really start before the event. And it might actually look an awful lot like a virtual event. And so what does that mean? Well, instead of sending out that email saying, hey, our agenda's live, go build your schedule. Or here's the know before you go email. Why not do it as a live stream? Here's 30 minutes on everything you need to know. Here are going to be the key ways you can connect with other attendees, with sponsors, with our content. If you're a first-time attendee, here are 3 top tips. Whatever it might be, you might be running effectively a virtual event while everyone is remote. And then they get on site, and then you can kind of run that on-site experience the way that you want to as well. Now, there's going to be some new opportunities during the event also. First of all that time spent in a virtual-only world meant that I think it's kind of uncovered or opened our eyes to the data collection opportunities. No longer are events going to be these kind of siloed experiences, but instead, now every interaction can really be digitized, whether it's happening in a mobile app, on a website, or in the real world. Second, there's an embrace now by your attendees of new technologies, things like QR codes, NFC. QR codes have been around for a very long period of time. They're actually a quite simple technology, but everybody was very reluctant to pull out their device and figure out how to scan it and go to the link that you're posting to. Now, just to test here, I wonder how many of you actually pulled up your phone to see what that QR code led to. I knew that some of you would do it. So it's just a link to my LinkedIn profile. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. But that's unlocking new ways to kind of cross that digital chasm from that in-person experience to that digital interaction through the mobile app or through the web. And second, NFC technology. We're seeing it on your phone in things like Apple Pay. We're seeing it in name badges where you can kind of tap and control your experience, again, digitizing that experience on site. And of course, there's that added ability to expand your reach, right? Whether it's meeting your accessibility goals, your sustainability goals, or simply just looking to expand your reach and increase your audience. Now you have that ability in a more turnkey way than ever before to extend your in-person experience to a virtual audience in the form of a hybrid event, where you can kind of start to create these shared digital experiences between your two audiences. Now, after the event, it used to be the after event experience was pretty simple. Here's a link to our feedback survey, and the planning team and the marketing team, well, they've been spending so much time planning and executing this event, they're behind on everything else, so they move on to the next thing. Now we're thinking about the data, we're thinking about the next best action, and attendees are thinking about your content. And it's not going to be enough just to provide a link to the PowerPoint. I remember we'd always ask the speaker or the planner, hey, is a copy of this PowerPoint going to be available? And maybe it would be made available for 10% of the sessions. But now the expectation is not only, or it's not even an ask for a PowerPoint. I want a full recording of that session that I loved, or that session that I missed because I was attending another one at the same time. So even if you're not live streaming it, you're thinking about how you record it and how you make it available on demand. And so we built that into the product. We've seen it happen automatically with virtual events. It's going to be a new expectation with in-person events, not only in the web, but also in the app as well. So maybe people are on the go, they're commuting, they're taking their kids to practice. Can they listen to that presentation just on their phone, almost like it's a podcast, or can they watch it on their device as well? So we're actually going to be bringing both live streams and on-demand content into the native app experience as well. Now, we talked a little bit about how we're changing the expectations before, during, and after the event, how we're extending engagement at every phase of the event lifecycle. But ultimately, events, well, they need to end. Some of the magic of events is their scarcity. the FOMO that you can create, that they happen and that they end, and you have a chance to miss it. And that's what brings everyone together at a certain place in time. But there's a lot of new opportunities we have to engage our audiences between those events. So what are those different things? Well, first of all, we're looking at things like webinars and virtual events and on-demand video. How do we leverage these assets to build a constantly engaged audience that's primed to attend your next event when it's available, when it's close to them, or when it's convenient? But in between, you're now able to tap into more scalable, higher reach, even a mix of live and on-demand engagement opportunities. So let's look at a couple opportunities. First of all, I love the ideas as we're able to run more events, whether they're local, regional, in-person, or virtual. There's no better future audience than your current one. So sometimes the best CTA after an event is simply signing up for the next event. And so we've enabled that. So inside of Attendee Hub, we allow our customers to promote their future events, to even feature them. And one of the cool things that we've really kind of connected the dots on is all these connections that people make in your events. Well, these can provide key signals of social proof. And to say, hey, you might want to attend that session because 3 of your connections are, or attend that upcoming event because 8 of your connections are attending this Treva International Conference, as you see here. So those connections aren't things that are built in a single event and then dropped and started again at a new event. Instead, we remember the connections and they last across your entire event program. So this community you're building by bringing people together frequently at events, these connections are an asset for you as a marketer, providing that social proof just to get people to attend that next event, to convert on that next CTA. So we allow you to promote the events, feature those events, and we make sure that your events aren't these siloed experiences. So not only do the connections last between events, but we make it easy for attendees to see the future events they've signed up for, the past events that they went to, or even the credits that they earned. So if you're awarding CE credits for professional development, the credits that they earned at those events, all within your program. Now, another way to keep your audience engaged is webinars, right? Where you don't have those same geographic constraints where people might have to travel long distances. You don't have the same time constraints where, hey, we're only asking 30 minutes, an hour and a half of your time. And so while we've built a full-blown virtual event solution in the form of Attendee Hub, we recently just launched Cvent Webinar. And that's a much more streamlined experience, simplified registration, a great way to build dynamic layouts like you've seen today. It's actually a tool we're using. So we have a studio tool that's a live stream production tool. So you can allow to create these different dynamic layouts from your remote presenters and directors, branded backgrounds and lower thirds. So you're able to create kind of constant movement. So our director here, Greg Jackman, is doing all the production for us, but he's not here in the studio with me and Patrick. He's remote at his home, able to produce this from anywhere. Now, your attendees are going to still have that interactive experience where they're piping into chat, Q&A, and polling, and we provide a single pane of glass for all of your speakers to be able to see that. And so instead of just presenting for long periods of time, they can literally take a question as the questions are flying in, or acknowledge the fact that we have someone here from Greenville, South Carolina, my home state of Columbia, South Carolina. I know we saw that in the chat earlier. So we have that single pane of glass for your presenters and speakers as well. Now, we're also not just thinking about content. What are ways we can connect audience members with each other as well? So we allow for simple things like discussion topics so people can join in small 6-person groups and have a good conversation, or instant networking for more serendipitous matchmaking so people can have that 5-minute timed conversation and move on to the next one. So a lot of ways in these more short-form experiences to create your audience to keep your audience engaged in between your events. Now, I'd be remiss in saying, hey, well, how am I going to help my team execute these webinars? Typically, it's a much more distributed set of users. It's not that highly centralized planning team or marketing team. So we've radically simplified our planner experience to enable you to build and launch these webinars in just a few short minutes with no training on Cvent required whatsoever. You see a quick preview of it here. I won't go through it all, but you see just some of the basics where you can build that simple registration process, the basic details, your theming to make it matches your brand. Choose what interactive features you want to use, from Q&A to polling to chat and surveys. And of course, what kind of presentation scheme do you want? What kind of networking do you want to allow as well? So we're really excited about our new webinar offering that we just launched this month. It's actually available for free. You can sign up in our app. We have a free version, of course, a paid version, and we're making it available to all of our current customers in the early next year. Now, one of the great things that I love about the ability to connect people, keep them engaged between events, is video. Events are all about engaging people live in real time. It's a synchronous interaction. But you're creating all these video assets. How do you make sure you get value from those video assets that are being created at your webinars, virtual events, and in-person events? So coming soon in early December, we're actually going to be releasing a new video library so you can manage all of your video assets and quickly deploy them across all of your events. We'll even enable you to do the basic video editing. So you can choose your thumbnail, manage your caption files and subtitle files, even do some lightweight video editing so you can trim those tops and tails very quickly in the product without having to export and import videos on your own. Now, that's just the video management side. But what we typically see is attendees come back and engage with your video content inside of our Attendee Hub, which is for your event, for a couple days or even weeks after your event. But eventually they stop coming back. But the videos, well, they're valuable for so much longer than just a few days or weeks. So with Video Center, we're enabling you to create an always-on, evergreen hub for all of your video content. So here you can promote your upcoming events. You can create different channels of video content. You can feature certain speakers that spoke in your event program or are going to be speaking. If we drill into some of these different channels of content, of course, you can create different channels and collections of videos. And as attendees can watch those videos, we also can feature who are the speakers that we're speaking here. What are the upcoming events that these speakers might be also speaking in? So you can see those kind of nice connective tissue across your entire event program. And we'd be missing a huge opportunity as people are looking at this video content on their own, in their own time. That's a great way to promote upcoming events to your attendees as well. So you can grab programmatically any events that are running in your Cvent account and have them automatically displaying here as you create those events. So just to kind of summarize some of the things that we talked about, we're really looking at, when we talk about the digital frontier here, digitizing that in-person event experience, mixing and matching virtual events with in-person events, expanding engagement before, during, and after the event, and really taking a look, hey, every event is not a siloed experience. It's part of a broader program. And so you need to think holistically, what is your customer journey? Not only for a single event, but what's happening between those events? And how do they all work together to create a more impactful event program? So those are a lot of things that excite us. At this point, I want to turn it over for some question and answer here. So let's look
Thanks,
at
McNeel.
a few of the things that we have here. So why don't we go to the top voted?
All right. So you can see McNeel and I actually are right here together in the studio. So I can give him a fist bump. See that? There we go. All right. So question. If 55% of marketers haven't integrated their event technology with MarTech, what is the reason why? Conrad, I think you'd be a great person to answer this one.
Yeah, thanks. So I think there's probably a couple of reasons. I think firstly, and we go right back to the start of the pandemic, marketers had to pivot overnight to virtual, and making those integrations wasn't a priority at that time, and perhaps they didn't properly consider the ease of integrations into their existing ecosystem. So I think that was one reason, just the speed with which we transitioned over to virtual. But now, what I also see is, a lot of clients are managing multiple event tech providers. And actually, once you're looking at multiple pieces of technology and building deep integrations into your CRM and your map and building consistent data around attendees, it starts to get really complex. The more that the technology pieces that you have to integrate with.
Excellent. Thank you, Conrad. All right, let's go to another question here. So what is the best way to incorporate events into an integrated marketing strategy? So I think I'll take that one. I think the best thing to do is to make sure that you really understand the event formats that are available to you and the goals that you have for those events in your event program. At Cvent, we really look at the buyer's journey and think about how we can thread events thoughtfully throughout all the different things we're doing. What events do we need to have to move the pipeline along? What events do we need to have to build our brand? What events do we need that are going to introduce and kind of be a top of funnel type of event? And we map this all out when we plan our investments for the year. And then we think about how the different events work across the buyer's journey, what the different goals can be for the different event formats. And that is how we really fund what we're doing. And of course, we're using Cvent technology as the underpinning system of record across all these events. So we understand how they interrelate too. We know who attended a webinar on Cvent technology that we might want to invite to our next roadshow in Chicago, and who in Chicago we met that we might want to meet at a trade show because we know they're on the trade show pre-show list that we got. So it gives us all this intelligence, but it's really important to make sure that you don't just run events in isolation. You don't just run those in silos, that they're part of a broader set of goals and a broader methodology that you really want to embrace. And obviously having technology is a key enabler of making sure you maximize all the goodness from your event program. Okay, one more question. If marketers are increasing event tech spend, what areas are they investing in specifically? McNeel, give us the answer to that one, please.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but a lot of marketers' eyes were open to just how many insights they could get from an event because of what happened in virtual events. Everything was digitized. Nothing was in the real world or quote unquote offline. And so we're realizing, hey, as attendees move into sessions, as they go to booths, as they watch videos and we understand the duration, we can start to understand key or uncover key signals of buying intent. We can understand engagement levels. And people are realizing, hey, how can I replicate that for my in-person events? So we used to see kind of a lot of sourcing of point technologies to solve point problems at in-person events. Now we're seeing a more holistic mindset. We're seeing that marketers are saying, hey, it matters to understand which sessions people actually go to, which content people are interested in. It matters to get those feedback surveys completed. It matters to see what data or what interactions are happening on the show floor. So we're seeing a more holistic approach to not only maybe sourcing registration and then just a mobile app, but maybe thinking of those together, thinking about check-in and badging and attendance tracking, all as part of one experience so that you can really have that singular view of the attendee journey fully digitized. And then if we zoom out to the program level, it is kind of that mix of not just thinking about the larger event, but how does that apply to all of my events, from the smallest to the largest, to the virtual to the in-person. So I think that's what's really kind of driving an increase in tech spend is it starts with that uncovering of, hey, there's so much opportunity in events. It's no longer just about who showed up and who didn't. There's so many more things we can do when we understand that attendee journey. And when we understand it, not just for one event in a silo, when we understand it across all of our events.
All right. Thank you, McNeel. So I think we've reached the end of today's session, so don't go anywhere yet. I just want to end with a couple thoughts. First, I want to thank Conrad Mills, Principal Analyst at Forrester, for all his great research, and McNeel for being my partner in crime here, live from the Cvent studio at Cvent's HQ. We always love talking about this stuff. So we do have a survey that we'd like you to take on the content of this webinar. We always love your feedback. We use it to make sure that our content is what you want to hear and do as much thought leadership as we can. So please start the survey. We'd love to hear from you. And also, we'd love to see you at a future webinar or Cvent event. We really want to make sure that we're leading the industry in the conversations around events. So we have, a few, actually 4 here between now and November 10th. So we have a lot going on. We have webinars on things like association and nonprofits, on how to run in-person events, on how to create and attract passionate attendees, depending on their generations. And then also ask Cvent anything, event challenges in 2022 and beyond. So we want to make sure that we're carrying on the conversation. Please join us in these conversations, and we'd love to see you again at an upcoming webinar. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.